Hello friends, welcome to GCA. I hope you all are doing good. So today's topic is Indo-China relations and this is a very important topic. This is basically an evergreen topic that always remains the most hot topic in SSB because this topic is important in lecturate, in GD and most importantly questions related to this can be asked in the personal interview. So in this topic I'm going to cover up everything right from the history, then the basic disputes between both the countries, and then the recent standoff from last 4 months, and finally the India's response, that is what India must do to contain China. So again, without wasting any time, let us start. Talking about the history first, so historically both the countries share very good relations because the old Silk Route not only served as a route of trade but also promoted Buddhism from India to China. Then in 1950, India was one of the first country to recognize People Republic of China as a legitimate government of mainland China. However, the major issue was Tibet because Tibet acted as a buffer zone between both the countries and India saw Chinese occupation of Tibet as an act of aggression, whereas on the other side Chinese warned India not to indulge in internal affairs. Then in 1954, both the countries signed Panchshil Agreement, that is for the principle of peaceful coexistence, where India accepted Tibet as a part of China. However, in 1959, the relationships between both the countries deteriorated because India provided asylum to Dalai Lama and his followers. So that was also the major reason for the 1962 war between both the countries. So the major issue between China from last many years is the border disputes because China does not recognize McMahon line as a legal demarcation line between India and China because it says that this was demarcated during the British era and Tibet. Then after 1962 war, there were another major skirmishes in 1967 which was in the Sikkim sector. One was the Nathula incident and second was the Chola incident where the heavy exchange of firing took place. Like around 88 Indian soldiers were martyred and more than 300 Chinese soldiers were killed. Then in 1987, when India granted statehood to Arunachal Pradesh, so both the sides they again were facing each other in the border tension. Like the tensions were raised between both the countries because China has never recognized Arunachal Pradesh as a part of India, and even today they call Arunachal Pradesh as nothing and they call the region as South Tibet. But after some days, the ceasefire was signed and both the countries decided to move back their troops. Then in 1993 and 1996, major agreements were signed between both the countries where the term LAC, that is the line of actual control, gained legal recognition and where it was decided that no country will overstep the particular area. However, the major issue was the different perception of boundaries because both the countries they say they have different perception of LAC. Like India recognize that this should be the area, like this should be the boundary of line of actual control, whereas on the other side China they have different perception, like they do not accept India's stand of LAC and India does not accept China's stand of LAC. So even after that, China continued to maintain lot of incursions in the Indian territory. The major incidents like Daulat Beg, all the incidents in May 2013, when a 3-week standoff took place between both the countries along the line of actual control. Then in 2014, there was Chumar incident. Chumar is basically a 300-kilometer northeast of Leh. It is basically in Himachal. And for very long, China has been trying to reduce India's dominance in the area. Then another incident was in the Damchuk incident, which is basically an area where the line of actual control ends and international boundary starts, and it is also the area from which Indus River enters into India. Then the major incident was in June 2017 referred to as the Dhoklam incident, and this was a standoff for more than 1 month where Indian army showed complete assertiveness and the only option left with Chinese was to withdraw the troops. Actually, in Dhoklam incident, the Chinese they entered into the Indian territory and Indian army formed a human wall to stop them. The actual reason for the standoff was at the Tri Junction. India objected to Chinese construction of road near the Tri Junction because the construction of the road was near to India's Siliguri corridor, which is a very strategic corridor. And if China they gets over control of this area, for example, they could have developed that road, then they could have moved their high level of military deployment. So because that is why India wanted to stop the Chinese from moving forward, because Siliguri corridor connects India's northeastern state with the rest of mainland India, and the capture of this strategic choke point can cut off, like it can, if Chinese get control over the Siliguri corridor, then they can cut off India's access to the northeastern state. So therefore this was the main reason that that is why the India acted aggressively against China. Now let us talk about the current standoff between both the militaries, which is there from last 4 months. So actually the current standoff, it all started in the month of May, when China started increasing their military build near Galwan Valley in the line of actual control. They started deploying around 5 to 10,000 of soldiers, and even they deployed high-tech weapons which like warlike machineries like tanks and artillery weapons. So basically, the Galwan Valley was also the flashpoint during the 1962 war, but it was never disputed in the LAC. Like, the major dispute between both the militaries is the different perception of LAC from both the sides. So in this month of May, China started, they entering into the Galwan Valley, and they entered around 3 kilometers of the area inside the Indian territory, and they later started claiming this as a part of their territory. So after this, the commander level task was held for both the sides for negotiation, and it was decided that the buffer zone will be created between both the sides of the line of actual control, and to further avoid any standoff, the armies of the both the countries, they were decided to be moved back by 1 kilometer to that area. So it was then on the night of June 15 that when the Galwan Valley incident took place, Colonel Santosh Babu of 16th Bihar Regiment, he was monitoring the whole process, and he noticed that the Chinese camp was still there, and he went to get it removed. For example, when he saw that the Chinese, they have not moved back, so when he consulted them and when he asked to remove the tent, so the major fight took place between both the sides. And actually it was they were not carrying any arms. However, the Chinese, they were fighting with Indian with the wire studded batons. Then it resulted in 20 soldiers of our armed forces got martyred, and more than 43 Chinese soldiers, they were killed. So after the Galwan Valley incident, India took some major actions against China. Like, India started criticizing China in the world arena. India said China had this is the China's betrayal, because it was decided in the 1993 and 1996 agreement that no side will use firearms, but China fought with the Indian soldiers with the wire studded batons, and even they were carrying sickles. Along with it, India imposed strict economic sanctions on China. Like, the major actions were taken by the government of India. Indian government decided to ban 59 major apps including TikTok, ShareIt and Camscan. Now let us understand why China entered the Galwan Valley and what is the importance of Galwan Valley for India. So Galwan is basically the name of a river, and talking about Galwan Valley was also a flashpoint during the 1962 war, and since then China is trying to occupy this area. That is, they are trying to change the status quo to alter the boundary of LAC. Then Galwan Valley has a very high importance for India, because last year India completed the construction of Darbuk Shayok Daulat Beg Oldie Road, which is basically the DSDBO road, which is a lifeline for Indian troops which are deployed along the Daulat Beg Oldie post. And this Daulat Beg Oldie post is the northernmost post of India, which is very close to Karakoram Pass, through which the CPEC passes. That is, it is the point where China and Pakistan, they join together via POK. And talking about Daulat Beg Oldie, it is the world's highest airstrip that was built during the 1962 war. And now China was very frustrated to see the India's construction of road, because it is a very strategic road. It is basically a 255-kilometer road which runs parallel to the LOC, and it connects Leh to DBO at the base of Karakoram Pass. Actually, the main reason of frustration was because it runs parallel to the line of actual control, and by occupying the Galwan Valley, China could have the complete control over this road. So that was the basic reason, and this road is of highly importance to India, because this road provides India access to the Siachen Glacier, and also the movement of military supplies, that is the logistic and further deployment of troops in case of war will be very easy. Like, it will directly connect Leh to the DBO, and for example, in case there is a war in the Siachen Glacier which is posed by Pakistan from the other side, so there, in case of war, it will be very highly determinantal for India, because India will be able to transfer the equipments and deploy troops within a very short time. And even this point is near to the base of Karakoram Pass, so India can even dominate that point, and even in the future can counter China's CPEC. So because of which the Chinese presence threatened the most important road that India constructed, that took more than 2 decades. And now China claims that India is doing illegal defense activities in the area which rightfully belongs to China. So thereby India has clearly mentioned in the recent meetings in the China that we are continue to construct the infrastructure development in our region. Now the second major point of contentious issue between both the countries is the Pangong Lake. Like, in the month of May, along with the Galwan Valley, China also started increasing its military buildup by increasing the deployment of troops and equipment across the Pangong Lake. So Pangong Lake is again divided by LAC. 45% of the territory is under India's control and rest is under the Tibet Autonomous Region, which is controlled by China. So basically it has two banks, that is on the northern side and the southern side. So firstly the dispute took place at the northern side, because on the northern side there are geographical locations called as fingers, and these are called as fingers because actually these are mountain spurs that are running towards lake in the form of fingers. So that is why the geographical locations are called as fingers, and there are total of 8 fingers, that is finger 1 to finger 8, and India used to do patrol from finger 1 to finger 8, and later 2 months ago China told India to limit their activities to finger 4 only. So India started doing patrol up to finger 4 only. But in a very shocking incident, China, they started building tents and even bunkers between finger point 3 and finger point 4. That is, they started constructing their base near the finger point 4. So that was the basic reason of dispute between both the countries. Now India resorted to aggressive patrolling in this area. India, like China, they started deploying their heavy equipment. India also deployed heavy machinery, for example artillery guns. The India also deployed tanks, most probably it is the T-90 tanks to counter China. And thereafter, in order for the complete disengagement, the meetings were held both at the military and as well as the diplomatic levels. And in the meetings, it was decided that both the countries should do disengagement for bringing the peace and tranquility in the region. Chinese told that India is they are moving into Chinese territory, but India told that we are equally committed to maintain peace and tranquility in the region, but we are also equally committed to maintain our territorial integrity, that we are not going to give even an inch of our territory to any foreign country. Then between the disengagement, when the talks are going on between the disengagement, so another incident took place on the night of 29th of August, because it was now the first incidence was at the northern bank of the Pangong Lake, where the Chinese side, they started occupying the major heights of finger 4. But on the 29th of August, the standoff was on the southern side. So Indian Army, actually using their surveillance devices, they preempted the strike, because by using their UAVs and surveillance devices, they thwarted Chinese movement, and thereby Indian Army occupied the major areas on the southern bank. That is, Indian Army occupied the strategic region of Blacktop, which is also called as the Kala Top region, and even they uprooted the Chinese camera. For example, on the Blacktop, Chinese, they installed their cameras basically for seeing the Indian activities in the Chushul sector and the beyond further. So thereby Indian Army gave a shock to Chinese, because Chinese were not expecting. They were trying to occupy this region, but because of Indian Army's alertness, Indian Army was able to occupy the dominating heights. And after which China started claiming that India has entered their territory. Now India is basically disputing the agreement signed between both the countries. So actually China was in shock. They were not expecting this preemptive move by India. Now let us see the importance of Pangong Lake for both the countries, why the issue is taking place at the Pangong Lake. So as we have already discussed, 45 km of the length of Pangong Lake is in Indian territory, and rest is in the Tibet Autonomous Region, which is under Chinese control. So again, the issue is same, like both the sides, they have different perception of LAC. So that is basically, the region is called the unsettled border. So that is the major reason of standoff. And again, in we have discussed about that there are two major points of Pangong Lake, that is from on the northern bank, and that is another is on the southern bank. So in the northern bank, China, they started occupying the major heights, dominating heights, to basically look over India's territory. But talking about the southern bank, which India has occupied, because India has captured the Kala Top region, and this is not for the first time. India has always maintained a very stronger presence on the southern side, because the region near the southern bank is very important for India, because it contains the major areas like Chushul sector, and second is Razangla area. And traditionally the southern bank has been in the limelight because it is just north of the Chushul, and this Chushul area is very important for India, because it is a plain area, and this can be used as launchpad for launching offensive against India if China tries to occupy. Now let us see why China indulges such kind of activities. What is the China's larger objective behind this? So talking about the larger objective, incursions from the China continue despite protest and various meetings by India from last many years. And talking about the rapid infrastructure of China, China has developed high surface and air communication facility all along the Tibet Autonomous Region, especially opposite to the Arunachal Pradesh. Whereas on the other side, that is the Indian side of Arunachal Pradesh, the area is highly underdeveloped because the terrain is very difficult, and therefore the building up infrastructure and movement of troops will be very difficult, and it will be more time consuming. And another reason is the assertiveness shown by China across the border region, because by showing their assertiveness, they are trying to stop India from building the infrastructure along the border. Then another reason is the China's string of pearls policy, where they have mentioned to isolate India by forming better ties with the Indian neighbors, basically by increasing the Chinese military infrastructure, and because of which they are trying to basically isolate it, surround India, so that there will be a pressure on India. But recently we have also adopted a new policy, the diamond of necklace, in order to counter this string of pearls policy. So this is the China's long-term goals. Now let us see the current reasons. That is why in the recent times, when everybody is facing COVID crisis, why China is trying to do this. So the very first reason is to divert the attention of people from COVID disaster and achieve something regionally, because everybody today is blaming China for mishandling of the coronavirus, and every major countries, they are putting blame on China. So even the US countries like US and Australia, they have openly called Chinese virus or Wuhan virus rather than the coronavirus. So that is the basic reason, like they, by trying to indulge in the territorial claim of other countries, so they are basically diverting the attention of people. Like now everybody is focused on China's standoff with other countries. Nobody is talking about China, that China is responsible for COVID disaster. And on the other side, 2 years ago, the Chinese premier Xi Jinping, he made himself as the president of China for the life, and now he was unable to manage the COVID disaster. So thereby there was an anger among the people. So basically his presidency was under threat. So thereby he wanted to do something for the Chinese people, that is in again to divert the attention of local people. Also he tried to gain regionally for the people, so that he can make the people of China happy, like we have occupied this regional area for a country by defeating the another country. So this is the main reason, that is for his own political interest. Now another reason is China does not want India to raise Hong Kong issue verbally, and in the recent time we have seen China is trying to finish the autonomy of the Hong Kong by introducing the various bills. Like last year they introduced the extradition bill. Now this year they have adopted the national anthem bill in Hong Kong. So thereby they want India not to raise this issue verbally, where many countries have raised, like US and China, US and Australia. And recently India is forging its ties with the Quad countries like Australia, Japan and US, because of which there is a pressure on China. So that is why they are trying to indulge such standoffs with India. Now the most important reason for the current standoff is China's frustration, because over the last years China has always stopped India from building infrastructure. Now last year, when India abrogated Article 370, after which the state of Jammu and Kashmir was bifurcated into two union territories. Now China is basically critical of this article abrogation, and even they have criticized India's new map. So that is the basic reason. Like we have already discussed about the DSDBO road. So they fear of the recent construction of the DSDBO road, because if India will be able to get much higher developed activities across the LOC, near the LAC, sorry, not a LOC, it's LAC. So then it can counter even China and Pakistan CPEC. And another reason is China is preparing the ground for claiming the portion of Ladakh, and actually they want to portray India as an aggressor in the Jammu and Kashmir. For example, from last many years they are already helping Pakistan by raising Kashmir issue at the UN. Now they are basically testing India's patience, that India will act in aggression and they will fire shots, they will attack China, and they will further take the issue to the UN, and also they will internationalize the Ladakh issue. Now let us see how to counter China. What should be India's response? Now talking about how to counter China, so firstly let us talk about the diplomatic level. So at diplomatic level, India must actively pursue its Act East policy by engaging all Southeast Asian nation countries who have clashing of interest with China in the South China Sea, and further forging ties with Japan to project a collective front. It means that is by establishing good ties with the Southeast Asian countries that have clashing of interest in the South China Sea. Like we all are aware that it is not alone with India that China have territorial claims. There are various countries in the South China Sea. The countries like Philippines, Vietnam and even Taiwan, these are basically the enemies of China. So by forming better ties with these countries, we can form a collective front, and the most arch-rival of China, that is the Japan, and we need to form the group with this anti-China camp, and thereby we can effectively counter China's total we can say position on the South China Sea as well as on the territorial issue. And along with it, we need to actively participate with the Quad countries. Like Quad is a group of four countries: India, US, Japan, and Australia. And by forging much more better ties with the Quad countries, for example, by conducting more joint exercises in the Indo-Pacific and the Indian Ocean region, and basically near the South China Sea, so which will automatically put pressure on China. So that is the another way. Now China, we all are aware that from last many a times they are also confronted by internal challenges for maintaining the political and social stability. So the internal challenges of China can be exploited by India. For example, the internal challenges they are facing is the Taiwan, which basically the Taiwan is granting a secession from the mainland China. Then the Hong Kong wants a political freedom. Similarly, there is a rising demand of Tibetans. They want a free Tibet from China. And the most important is violent demands of Uyghur Muslims. From last many a times, Chinese they have been committing crimes against Uyghur Muslim, and Uyghur Muslims have been exploited by Chinese over the years. So by raising these issues, we can counter China diplomatically. And in terms of military, India need to maintain a assertive stance, like from assertive stance which we are maintaining from the last 4 months. And similarly, the recent stance which we have shown by dominating the major heights in the southern bank of the Pangong Lake. So we need to invest more in our border infrastructure. For example, there is a need of infrastructural development, like we have already discussed that on the Arunachal side we have a very underdeveloped region. So thereby forming better roads which will make better connectivity to the border areas, we can counter China, because in case of war, with the better road and better facilities, we will be able to move up our machineries. And even a few years ago, we have constructed the Dhola Sadia bridge, which is basically capable of handling even 60 ton of war machineries like tank. And on the other side, we need to improve our force level along the LAC and northeastern border. For example, by setting up a mountain corps which is being planned to face the mountain warfare. And then the most important thing is the modernization of the armed forces. Like, it is only through the highly capacity building of the armed forces that we can counter China, which can basically pose a direct threat. For example, in the recent times, we have signed a lot of deals. We have recently acquired Rafale, and the first batch of the Rafale recently inaugurated by India, and now very soon we are going to get our next batch in the month of October. And finally, the all Rafales will be there in India by end of 2021, and by 2021 we will be able to get the S-400 missile defense system for India. And along with it, we need to deploy our strategic assets, like deployment of Agni 5. Agni 5 will act as a deterrent to China as well as Pakistan. Although Chinese army is far superior than Indian military, but it does not mean that China is invincible. And talking about Indian army battle hardness, we are very much battle hardened as compared to China, because we are not the India of 1962 when we faced humiliating defeats from China. And the reason we all know that for the humiliating defeat of China in 62, because we were not better prepared. That is, there were not adequate equipment for the Indian soldiers to fight the war, and we were not prepared for fighting a mountain warfare. But the scenario today has totally changed. Indian army is highly battle hardened. Like, from last 30 years, we have been engaging in the CI operations, and every day Indian army is engaging in terrorists along the LOC and as well as in the northeastern border. And on the other side, Chinese army is not battle hardened, because the last military venture they had was in 1979 with the Vietnamese army, where the Vietnamese army outperformed Chinese soldiers. And along with it, the most important reason is China seriously lacks the inter-services integration, that is the synergy between the three forces, which is very much required to win a battle, because of the preferential treatment given to the ground forces. So this is the major issues for the Chinese military. Now let us talk about economically. So although China is a major trading partner of India, and like in the recent times, people have been saying we should cut all the trade with China, but it is not possible, because we are largely dependent upon China, and what China is exporting to India is only 3% of their total export. And on the other side, India just import only 1% to China. So there will not be any huge impact of China. But considering the fact that at present we have 57 billion trade surplus with China, so which China is basically enjoying. So the trade surplus that they are enjoying, they are using us against. For example, by purchasing military, they are using against our military. And now we can take our action. For example, even if it hurting the people, like recently we have decided to ban some major apps. First, in the first batch it was 59 apps. Now in the second batch it was 118 apps. Therefore, it is very important to reduce dependency on Chinese products progressively, and need to look for other markets like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and US. And finally, the focus must be given on self-reliant. Like recently, we have started up with Atmanirbhar Bharat. So thereby, we need to give a push to our domestic industry, because if we are making our indigenously equipment, indigenously product, then there will not be need to look at the other countries. And finally, it is going to save our huge amount of trade surplus that we have with other countries. Now let us see at the India's option at political level. So politically, there is a need for political will is needed to give a clear signal to China that India will not compromise in protecting its territorial sovereignty. Because in the recent times, although the ruling government have shown a political will in fighting against China, like recently our defense minister traveled to Russia for attending the SEO meeting, where he held a meeting with Chinese counterpart, where he clearly mentioned that we are equally committed to maintain peace in the region, but we are not going to even lose 1 inch of our territory, and we are very much committed to maintain our territorial integrity. And now recently another meeting is going on in the Russia for the SEO summit. Before that, the meeting of defense ministers was held. Now recently the meeting between external ministers are going on, and our external minister Jaishankar, he raised the current standoff issue with the Chinese counterpart, where he addressed China about the recent actions taken by the China. For example, for the first time in the last 45 years, the use of firearms was used by both the militaries. The fires were fired in the air, and it was basically a signal by the China, like they are, like we have already discussed, like they are waiting for India to fire aggressively so that they can show India as an aggressor on the world arena. So finally, there is a need for actively engaging the rules of actively telling the soldiers of the rules of disengagement and patrolling area, and the need is required to give free hands to the soldiers in case of fight. Now let us talk about some miscellaneous relations between both the countries. So China and India, they are a part of many international organizations, for example BRICS, SEO, G20, and from last many years China has always opposed India's entry into the major organization. The first is entry at the UN, because China has always vetoed India's, the areas which are under India's favor. For example, China is blocking India's entry into United Nations Security Council as a permanent member, and along with it, it is also blocking India's entry into the nuclear supplier group, citing the reason that India is not a signatory of non-proliferation treaty. And whereas talking about other issues like for helping Pakistan, China over the time have always raised the issue of Kashmir at the UN. And along with it, from last many years, China was also blocking India's bid to label Masood Azhar as a global terrorist. However, in the last year, China has named Masood Azhar as a global terrorist because of US and other countries' pressure. But from last many years, it was blocking India's move. And even in the recent time, China has criticized India's action after the abrogation of Article 370 just to support Pakistan. So this is about India-China relations, and I have tried my best to give everything about Indo-China relations in a very short time as possible, as because this is a topic on which one can speak for even more than 3 hours. So this is important for the SSB point of view, and this is the most important topic in my recently started series regarding the important SSB topics. And before that, I have already covered about India, Israel, Nepal, Russia and US relations, and out of which in the current time this is very important video, and I suggest you to watch this video at least 2 times for understanding the concepts clearly. So friends, this is all about today. Thank you and God bless you all, and in the coming up days also I will make such kind of more informative videos for you, so that you can get the required amount of information which can help you in your SSB preparation. So this is all about today. Thank you and God bless you all. And now I suggest you to tell me in the comment section on which topics you want a video, and the topics on which majority of the votes will be there, then on that topic I will make video on the priority basis. So this is all about today. Thank you. Good luck.